Okay, so we're starting part 3 of today's class. We first described a little bit some of the data structures that we can use in R as placeholders for our variables. The second part we covered our first real data set, the CABI data set, and how can we save that in a data frame, how can we make processing quicker with matrices, how can we write small snippets of code to do different things on top of the data frames that we're working with, how can we do very simple analysis and so on, right? And finally, a very important tool when we are exploring data sets is actually visualizations. Okay, so we're going to be working today with ggplot2, which is a tool that allows us to explore data graphically in R. In the first class, we ran some commands with plot, but the thing is that ggplot2 basically the images with ggplot2 are much better and they're almost publication quality, and also it follows kind of a grammar, so even the commands or the plots that we want to do might be, even if the plots might be really complicated, it's still doable in the sense that we know what we're doing when we are adding some in commands. It follows more of a logical expression. We're going to see it right now. So the first thing that we need to do is install the ggplot package. So if you haven't already done so, remember that the command is install packages ggplot. And then once you have it installed, to use it, you will use require and the name of ggplot. We're going to do a couple of examples with ggplot, one with the weather dataset that we used in the first class and the other one with the CABI data. Okay, we'll start with the weather dataset because it's simpler, and then we'll move on to the CABI dataset. ggplot has a set of basic components. The main function is ggplot, where we basically specify the dataset that we are using. Then we also need to specify the statics. So what's going to be in the x-axis, the y-axis, the colors, the shapes of the points, and so on. And we also need to specify what's the geometric. So do we want to represent a histogram, a line, dots, densities, and things like that. And finally, we can also specify scales for continuous, discrete, or log. If we start with the weather data, remember that we can view weather. So we can go here and check the weather. Remember that we had for different locations, we had a minimum temperature, maximum temperature. We have different wind data sets, whether it would rain or not, pressure and humidity data, and so on, right? So the first command that we see here, basically it's saying, okay, let's ggplot the weather data where the x-axis and y-axis are going to be the temperature, okay? And then we want to use a geometric point of size 3. We can make it a slightly bit more complicated, as in this case, where we are also specifying that the dots are going to have a different color based on the rain feature. What do we mean by that? Okay, the command basically that's written in there, I already have it in here, so let me just retrieve it. It's this command, right? And the plot is like this one. So what this means is that, okay, take the data in the data frame, the weather data frame. Okay, we have a mean and a max temperature, which are the x and the y-axis. But instead of plotting the dots as is, change the color based on the column rain today. Okay, so there's a column, this one, called rain today. Sorry, this one here, okay? And basically, we're using this column to decide whether the color of the dot is going to be one or the other. And basically, these type of plots allow us to study trends. Okay, what you can see here is that the days where it rains, in fact, the maximum temperatures are lower than, in general, than on the days where it does not rain. Okay, and this is, visual exploration of the data we're working with. Other examples, we can also, for example, modify the shape of the dot. Play with that. We can also specify the type of geometric representation. So, here it was points. Here it's a geometric bar. So in this case, we're just representing the wind direction, and we're counting the number of times the direction is of one or the other type. Okay, there are all those types there. So basically, it's a histogram. Okay, and that's the way we would represent a histogram. And if we want, for example, to represent a line, in this case, we are taking the weather data frame and we are representing on the x-axis the humidity in the morning, on the y-axis the humidity in the afternoon, and we are representing it with a line. And here again, we can observe that whenever in the morning the humidity is higher, the humidity is also going to be higher in the afternoon. But whenever in the morning at 9 a.m. the humidity is low, chances are that the humidity at 3 p.m. will also be low. Okay, so this is another trend that we can explore visually after representing the data with ggplot. And finally, of course, every time you create a plot, you will want to save it. Okay, so once you've created the plot, the command to save it is ggsave. Basically, you can just write, I also have it somewhere, you can just write ggsave and the name of the file as you want to save it. Okay, in my case, I want to save it as with a name first.pdf, and that's the name that the file is going to take. Okay, and then I can use that PDF file, say, for the report that I'm generating from my homework. Okay, you have here many other different options for saving, okay, specifying the file path or specifying the size or the format and so on. Okay, just play around with them. And let's go again to the CABI dataset. Okay, what types of representations we can do with the CABI dataset? So the first thing that we want to do is get an outline of this scene. Okay, so we'll see throughout this course that there's a lot of data sets that already exist in R, okay, and that we can make use of. And one of those data sets is basically maps of the different states, okay? So there's in fact a data structure called map data, where you can basically extract what's the outline for the different states. In our case, what we're going to do is extract the outline for the District of Columbia, okay, and plot it. This is what these two commands are going to do. So let's look at them. Basically, what we need to do is, okay, take all states, that's going to be the name of my variable, and from map data, take the information on a per state basis. Okay, and then what I do is, for the state that I want, take okay, so basically with these two commands, what I'm saying is just give me the outline for the state of District of Columbia, okay? And what this is saying is basically all the points that will form the shapefile for the District of Columbia. And then what we can do is basically plot it. Here, remember that what the stations have, remember that the stations are all these ones, okay? So what we are doing here is basically plotting the geometric area covered by the stations that we have in the state District of Columbia, okay? But obviously we want to do more than that, okay? What we want to do in reality is see where the stations are. We want to see the map of the stations, okay? So what we are going to do is basically add to this graphic representation, we are going to add geometric points where each point is the station, okay, and where the x and the y-axis are the latitude and the longitude. And remember that in general, the data frame typically defines everything as characters, okay? So we want to define them as numeric values. So that's the reason why we have the numeric function. So what we're doing here basically is say, okay, if we have this ggplot, we are going to add a geometric point where the data is coming from the stations and where the statics are going to be x as numeric for long and y as numeric for latitude. And then we're going to say that the color that we want is the red one, okay? And what do we obtain? So what you see here is basically, map of the scene with all the stations that we have, okay? The stations that you see on the left-hand side here are some stations in Virginia. These are some stations in Silver Spring, okay? And, outside what the District of Columbia is considered, but that are also part of the Viking system, okay? But as you can see here, this is a really simple plot with ggplot, but allows us to do very rich, okay, and informative plots in an easy manner, just by adding, in this case, we have added a geometric polygon and we have added geometric points, but we can add as many things as we want. Okay, that's the beauty, actually, of ggplot. Okay, so you have here another exercise. It says, let's plot the duration of the rides for each type of subscription. So you have, remember that we have two different types of subscriptions, subscribers versus casual, what we call, commuting people versus tourists. So imagine that we want to understand what's the duration of the rides for each type of subscription, okay? So what you have here with these commands, basically you're saying, okay, we're going to plot information from the rights dataset. And what we need to do is basically build a histogram where the x-axis is going to be the duration with a specific bandwidth. And we only want to see durations up to 100. Okay? So the plot would be something like this. Okay, we basically want to say, okay, for all the durations that we have, let's explore the histogram. And here what we can see is that, there's quite a lot of trips, mostly in this area, quite a lot of trips of a short duration, okay? And then obviously trips, start being longer and longer and longer. You can do many other explorations. So use ggplot, for example, with different types of geometries, and you can use other types of datasets. As I was saying, R has a lot of datasets built that you can just pull out. For example, mass is a library, and just if you type library mass into R, and you will see that you have a lot of information regarding airline passenger numbers for around 10 years in the 50s. Okay, so if you look into that, if you like library mass, okay, and then data, basically you have here all the information. So it contains air passengers, sales, check weight, Eurostock markets. Okay, this is a library that contains all these datasets here. So what this means is that if you write something like, for example, view, I don't know, hair, sorry, if you write view hair eye color, okay, basically this is one of the multiple datasets that the library mass has. Look into this library. Try to play around with different datasets here. Take 2 or 3 datasets and try to play around with ggplot and see, what many different things you can do with ggplot and with all the different options. Okay, try creating a plot, try creating histograms, try adding lines, try different types of axes, try color shapes, and try saving them. Okay, because again, you will need these for your projects. And that's it for this week. Next week, we'll start looking into probabilistic learning and how we can use probabilities to extract insights from different types of data.